Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 10 of Marketing is a Joke.
It's wild.
And we have a doozy of a guest.
It was so good. We just got done talking to a legend. He has the same last name as me.
So you know it's good.
You know it's going to be good. Spelled differently. It's okay. It's totally cool. Mr. Andy Pearson.
Andy Pearson is the VP of Creative at Liquid Death. And in case you've been living under a rock, or you just deleted social media and you're just a good, wholesome person.
Or you don't go into gas stations. You just never walk into a gas station.
Never once been into a gas station. They are one of the most disruptive, not even water brands, just one of the most disruptive brands in the world right now. They have become famous for their absurd and insane and always funny marketing approach. Where, we talk about it on the episode, but there's the last commercial I saw them make. It's a guy smoking cigarettes in a classroom full of kids, telling them the dangers of sugar. And so, so many just great campaigns, great commercials. And, I've been following them for a while, been a huge fan of their brand. And I saw Andy on LinkedIn and saw he was the VP of Creative and saw like kind of how he thinks. And I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. See if he would come on our podcast, and he so generously responded and agreed to come on. So we got to spend an hour with one of the biggest legends working right now, in my opinion. I mean, if you are not familiar with the work, but hit pause on this episode and go watch some Liquid Death commercials, because it is truly unlike anything else that anyone else is doing. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is what we're learning from this podcast. Ask people.
Yeah.
Reach out. Dude, we're getting our minds blown because it feels like a cheat code. It's like, how are we talking to these people?
Yeah.
Because they're bringing a lot of value. And I think for any listener that's, of course, in the marketing thing, but here's the cool thing. If maybe marketing is not your specific niche, it's not what you work in, there is still so much gold inside of this with the way that you can, if you're into business, if you're into just creativeness, if you're into, because everything he was talking about was like, how do we stop creativity from getting killed? Like, how do we keep creative just flowing? And this is a very fun interview. You guys are going to enjoy it a lot. So
without any further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Andy Pearson, the VP of Creative at Liquid Death.
I love the depth, man. I love some room that has some depth, and you got that going. That looking real good. Yeah.
Thanks. My old room before this room was like, it's funny you say that because it was like twice as long. It went way back, but it was about half as narrow, and it felt like I was in a bunker. And I'd get on calls and people would be like, "Are you okay? Where are you?" And it was this like shitty old house I had in Echo Park, and the like looking out my window was it was like barbed wire immediately next to my window, and then it just looked out to like a Domino's and a smoke shop and a pet store. It was like the most depressing view. So we moved like a year and a half ago, and my room is much better now.
That's great. Story. Now the trees are really a really nice touch. Although Domino's is great. Underrated pizza, in my opinion. That's awesome, man. Dude,
so, great. Andy, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and like how you got started with marketing and then eventually Liquid Death? Would love just to learn more about you.
Okay. So I'm the VP of Creative at Liquid Death, as we've mentioned already. I basically, get to lead a pretty small but crazy creative team in-house. We do everything from, insane, hilarious videos that, tend to get lots and lots of views to like our insane emails that go out on almost, an every other day or daily basis, to the live experiences we do, to social, to, we have an amazing line of merch. So we're really doing it. We're kind of doing it all. And beyond that, we don't just concept the work. We see it from start to finish. So come up with the ideas. We have a production house inside Liquid Death called Death Machine that produces everything. And then I've now started co-directing a lot of the work myself with our EP. So, and then we take it to our editor, and so we literally do everything from start to finish ourselves, which is pretty rad.
That's so cool.
But I got started. I think the first time it's funny. The other day I was thinking about it, and I was like, I think the first time I noticed brands like in a meaningful way was Back to the Future 2.
Okay, yeah.
I had it on VHS, which tells you how old I am. And it was on VHS whenever I was sick. I would be at home from school with like a fake tummy ache or something, and so I could watch Back to the Future 2 on VHS. And my parents had taped off of ABC or whatever, right. So it had all the commercials and everything in it. And I remember the funny thing about that movie was it was so good because obviously the future thing, but also they had all these brands baked into it along the way. So it was like Pepsi was in the little soda fountain that they had, and then there's like a Texaco gas station, and there's a Pizza Hut pizza that they rehydrate level 4, please, and it's like all baked into the movie, which made it feel really real, but also it was kind of funny. And so I don't know. I was talking about Back to the Future 2 the other day, and I think I was like, oh yeah, maybe that's kind of where that came from. My interest in this stuff. And then I remember in 6th grade, we had this like language arts class, which I don't even know if that's like a real class. I was always confused. I'd moved down to outside Atlanta to the south from in Michigan,
cool.
And it was a weird cultural experience. And instead of like teaching us about English, which I thought we were supposed to be doing, my teacher would do units on like taxes, and
that's awesome.
We would spend like 2 weeks, but it was like anti-government. It was like the government's taking our money, And I was like, we're 6th graders. I'm not sure we should be learning this.
Yeah, he's tenured. Your teacher's in there. He can't go anywhere.
Yeah, and I remember she did this unit on like the evils of advertising, and it was like looking for skulls that had been airbrushed into the ice cubes of liquor ads and stuff like that. It was real like conspiratorial Southern Methodist stuff.
That's so great.
And I was like, that seems fun. It's like people are getting to put skulls in things, and I remember like thinking someone was so worked up by that we were being taught about it. Like that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So that was probably, I don't know. Those are sort of my like early memories of that. And then I ended up studying it in college, and then went after that to the Creative Circus, which is like a portfolio advertising school. And then
that's cool.
Through that got landed a couple some pretty big agencies at the time, and eventually through random life changing events found my way to Liquid Death exactly 3 years ago as of yesterday.
No way. Oh wow, congratulations. That's cool. Happy anniversary. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a wild 3 years.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I've have learned so much and really grown, especially like in the comedy space. I mean, I never really considered myself a funny person, but I've learned how to be funny, I think, over the last number of years, and how much of a science that is in a lot of ways. So that's my whole freaking story.
Dude, that's super cool.
So rad.
What, so how old is Liquid Death as a company? Because it's pretty new, right?
Yeah. We were first, available to consumers about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So the idea had been in the works before that. It took a while to actually figure out how to make the product. There was a lot of issues with canning spring water, because literally no one was doing it.
Wow, right.
At the time. And now, now canned water is kind of a thing, but even so around for 3 years, around for 5 years, direct to consumer. About 3 years ago when I joined, we were just starting to get into retail for the first time. But yeah, it was funny. Even then, people would be like, "Water in a can? No one's ever going to drink water out of a can."
Yeah. That's so awesome.
And then, I mean, it's wild. I mean, people tell that straight to our faces, And then it flipped like maybe a year in, once we had started having some real success, and we started. It was like, wow, you guys are really everywhere, and suddenly this thing that had sounded so stupid, we'd get on calls and people would be like, water in a can. It's such an obvious idea. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
That's awesome.
So
yeah.
That was like the best compliment. It was like this thing that seemed so stupid before, like flipped kind of almost overnight, where people caught up with what we're doing. And so I think that was really, that was a pretty cool moment when that started happening.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what was the brand like kind of when you joined? I'm sure it was much different than the Liquid Death that we know today. I guess what I'm asking is like, what were you able to kind of then bring to the team? Were you the guy who was like, hey, let's start doing things really like in a funny way, in a very disruptive way? Or was that kind of already built into the business plan and then you just helped guide that?
Yeah. No. Our founder, Mike Cesario, is he's an ad creative himself. He, and he was basically frustrated with, having a bunch of great ideas over the years that clients wouldn't buy and don't listen to. And so, I'm simplifying things, but I think, part of it was like, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I have this idea that no one else, that a lot of people probably don't believe in, and it seems so insane, that I'm just going to have to go and make it myself. And so he did. Yeah. And so, a lot of the elements, a lot of the things he was doing was, it was an amalgamation of his own background, a lot of things that he gleaned from his experiences at agencies,
Cool.
A lot of really smart marketing tactics. And I think like really the idea was, in a lot of ways, it's sort of like, hey, everybody is just doing the same boring shit over and over again, or they're not thinking about what they're doing. And so can we approach not just advertising and marketing, but like the way we build a company, the type of people we hire, all the processes, all these things, can we take kind of an outsider's perspective and apply it to literally everything across the board? So the fun thing is, beyond just all the advertising and marketing we do, that is kind of applied to everything we do internally as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is fun because it's like, it's a place that's creatively driven. So it's not just, it's creatively driven. So that doesn't just apply to the creative or the marketing. It applies to everything, which makes it a really rad environment.
Yeah, I can imagine. What is how big is the team over at Liquid Death?
I mean, we're the marketing team is, relatively small. I think, like I said, we keep it really tight because it works that way. It's really more of a writer's room than anything else. It's not like a traditional, it's not like, oh, we're going to work on round one and then we turn it in and then get feedback and then round two. It's just like, it's just me and a couple of people on a call, just riffing back and forth and trying to basically make each other laugh.
Yeah.
And then when the dumbest ideas, win. And then, and then we'll take it. Yeah. We'll take it to, up to Mike. And then he has a lot of great input. And then so it's like, it's a really easy process and it's very, intentionally loose.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man. I love the in-house, just the model. That sounds so great. Cause I feel like you're saying, like a lot of the red tape that agencies come across as a business being like, well, I don't think we want to do that. Like, I don't think that lines up with what would actually work. And it's almost every time it is what would work.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's really cool to have someone who starts with that already perspective, starting a business. Cause I imagine like everybody who's joined the team has that mentality of like, oh, let's just try things. Let's just see what happens. And
exactly. Yeah. And to that point, it's like, man, the amount of effort, it was my experience in my last agency. It was like the amount of effort that goes into, I was kind of running the creative department somewhere. And I realized, I was like, man, I spend 50% of my time just trying to mind read clients. Like literally 50% of my energy is put into that. Yeah. And then having to like build presentation decks that are going to sell them in on this thing. but beyond that, there's so much wasted energy from kind of both sides in a way, where there's all this like pomp and circumstance. We have to build these decks and all this stuff. And like, just think of it. I mean, I was just hanging with some agency people a couple of nights ago, and they were talking about staying up till 4 a.m. doing these like banner ads for a presentation. And I was like, I don't think that's making that's like,
it's not moving the needle.
Yeah, that's not the thing that's going to make or break this presentation. So
right.
I kind of wish for everybody that there was like, we could all take away all that artificial crap that nobody needs. We all just agree like, this isn't necessary, because if everybody frees themselves up from that, it's so much easier than we're all trying to make it.
That's so cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think we're a good example of that, of trying to take away all this like artifice and just loving making really great fun stuff that we don't have to make overwrought with all these other voices and all this other stuff that has to go into it.
Yeah.
Dude.
That's extremely cool. So I'm the creative director for a company called The Adventure Challenge. And that's been something we've done too, is we've done everything in-house, like production, writing. And so it's been fun getting to do that. And a couple years ago, we started working with some agencies, like when we needed to make ads for Mexico, for instance, and working with the agencies made me really grateful for the things that we did in-house. Cause I'm like, man, like all the things that they have to like run by us for our approval or whatever,
Yeah.
And you can tell like they're in those jobs for a reason. Like they're like really creative, smart, brilliant people, but you can just see the bottlenecks just slowly. And then it's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot more overthinking happens that way, as opposed to like, hey, this makes us laugh and we feel like this is the brand voice that we want to build. So let's just do it.
I think we should coin the term like underthinking.
Yeah.
I feel like overthinking is so, it's just like, let's underthink this thing. Let's just throw it out there and make it, and see what happens. Yeah. It's funny.
Cool.
Cause you guys do stand up. Like I always liken what we're doing to stand up, and I don't do it myself, but I want to begin actually, because this whole thing has made me curious about it. But it's the same thing. It's like if you're doing stand up, you have to get up every night and test material, try stuff out, and fucking fail and be okay with failing and bombing. Right.
Right.
And you have to put in so much energy to get a tight 10, and we're kind of in the same way. We're kind of building this body of work over time by just throwing a lot of stuff out there. We're just doing it in a more extended space, but we're just doing things as quickly and, cheaply as possible so that we can make more and try out more stuff and test it live. And it's like, I was saying, I saw Bert Kreischer a month or two ago at the Kia Forum, and one of the biggest touring comedians on the planet is like, in the middle of the set, he's like, hey, I've got some new material I want to test out on you guys, right? Yeah. Yep. Dude who's doing this, you're literally at the top of the game, and you're still testing out stuff live in front of a massive audience, right? Yep. And so I think that's the analogy that I want other people to kind of understand from the marketing side is you can do that. You have to be okay with failure and trying a bunch of stuff.
But that's cool.
But like that's the upside is that you just get to test out things constantly. Yeah. And I think like all that, when there's too much process and budget and all these things that decrease the amount of work you get to make, it's robbing creatives and marketing departments and advertising departments of the chance to test stuff out and learn it. Because like I said before, I don't think I'm like super funny, but I've learned to be funny because we've made so much stuff over the last couple of years that I'm like, cool. Now I get this idea of rhythm. I like understand when we're shooting something, what's going to play when we get into the edit. Yeah. You pick that up by making the thing, not by writing the thing.
That's good.
And too often it's like creatives are just like writing scripts to go in a deck that gets read once maybe, and then goes away. And there's no learning to be had from that, from anybody. Right. You have to make stuff to learn from it.
Dude. So what's one thing that, has caught, like that was an example of something that caught you by surprise? Like, well, let's just try this and see if it works. If you guys are doing that constantly, was there one thing you're like, I don't really know if that's going to work, but then it did? Do you have an example of anything?
Kind of everything, honestly. That's true, not true. We've learned how to build and engineer stuff to be, what people love. By doing this, I think one of the first things that I did, I kind of came into this thing already in progress, but we were doing the Tony Hawk bloodboard thing where we took Tony Hawk's blood and then we painted it, we mixed into paint, and then we put in the skateboard graphics and painted skateboards with them and sold 100 skateboards with Tony's blood in it. And that idea was already in place when I kind of walked in, but it's the first thing that I shot. And that went out and it just like exploded on the internet, globally. And, I think, we always we feel good about stuff, but we were just like, holy shit, it took on a life of its own. It ended up, because there's this whole component with Lil Nas X, we didn't have it written to it. Yeah. But the shoes, he commented on it. So that gave it this other like viral wave. And then he had some quote that was like, nah, he tweaking, when someone asked him about an interview. Then that became a meme that just like people put into bots and put on Instagram, and almost shut down Instagram to the point where Instagram had to comment that they were like dealing with the nah, he tweaking thing. And then and then we eventually got Lil Nas and Tony together to make a video, this like kind of funny little video. So it had these like crazy 4 big peaks that we just kind of rolled with, and we're like, wow. So that was probably the best example of something that just totally got away from us, and the internet took it and ran with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Cool. I think that really speaks to being rewarded for being bold with your messaging and creatively being like, let's just do this. It could, I'm sure there were thoughts in the back of your mind like, oh, this could be so weird. People could be weirded out by this, or this is so unorthodox, but you just sent it, and then it had such an amazing, viral impact.
And I think, I don't know, the weird stuff is like another good example is we did this elf collaboration recently that was really fun, that I really am proud of, with the Elf Cosmetics, and we sold corpse paint as like this like boppy 90s commercial for like preteen girls, but it was this black metal dude jumps out of the magazine, and then it looks like he's gonna, like, something bad is gonna happen, and then they're just like corpse paint, and it's them like dancing around in the and then it takes like a really weird turn at the end. It has this like really weird left turn at the very end that you don't ever see coming. And that was one where I was like, I don't even know what this thing is. We're like, I found it's like the humor we're doing is happening on all these different levels, where part of it's the parody, part of it's this like social commentary, part of it is this like visual thing. So that's been the fun thing, is the humor we found is kind of like layered, a couple layers deep. It's not just like, it's not simplistic. And I think to shit on marketing for a second, a lot of like marketing is like, here's the joke, and we're going to set it up, and here's the punchline. And then, and also we're going to cast a bunch of people that like feel like funny actors, so that they look funny already to begin with. So, it's a joke. And I think our stuff is so weird, and you don't even know why you like it a lot of times, because we're mashing together all this stuff that just is like funny to us. And so that was another really good example of something that we felt good about when we were putting it out. We felt good, and we never want to get overly confident, because we're always like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And then that thing also blew up and was like, took over TikTok for about a week straight. Wow. And spawned all this stuff, and I got death threats over it from black metal dudes, and it was wild.
You're doing something right when you get death threats for your work. For an ad, yeah. So that felt like new achievement level unlocked at that point.
That's great.
Yeah, I've certainly never been there before.
Yeah, we're trying to get there. We haven't had it happen yet. No, man, that's
One
awesome.
day.
Dude, so I got some. Curious, like, what is something that you guys do within your company or in your meetings that sounds like you just have a really rad culture of like freedom expression? Is there anything particular that you've noticed that you do with Liquid Death that's different from other companies that you're like, oh, I love this about, when our team gets together, it's the writer's room. You were saying it's like, it is way more of a collaborative effort. What do you guys do to maintain that? Because I feel like that's what a lot of businesses struggle with, is like that hierarchy thing that kind of kills creativity. And it seems like you guys have, like you said, this multi-layer of creative, like from the design to the comedy to so how does that ecosystem kind of work for you guys?
I think you have to, again, it's like take away a lot of the artifice and like be okay with ideas not being fully fleshed out. If we can all point to something and we're like, yeah, that feels like the right thing to do. A lot of time, it happens like almost every day, where we'll have an idea and we're like, cool, yeah, that feels like the right sort of space. And then we feel very confident that we can take something and run from like, yeah, that's about the right idea, and then kick that into production almost immediately. That's without, cool. A lot of times without even scripts written. A lot of times it'll be like a week out, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta write the script for this thing we're shooting in a week.
That's awesome.
Or we gotta get it. But it's like, it's like, we have that confidence that we're like, cool, this idea, this is the right space, this is the right idea. let's just like move on it and build it as it goes. And so I think that's what's helpful, is that we don't have to do this like back and forth of landing on the exact right script or in this thing, or, you know, getting like that sort of, I don't know. I think there's like, I always thought it was funny that there's all this back and forth on what the VO, like the exact word that we're going to use in the VO. And I'm like, it's going to get rewritten 5 times by the time we get in the edit anyway. Right. So, but there's all this like consternation on the front end about making it exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think for us, it's like, the idea is obviously core. The script and getting that together is like pretty good. Once we get on set, like that's a whole other exploration on how we make this thing funnier on the day. And then once we edit it, now there's a whole chance to find all these like great comedic things to add in or reshape it, whatever. So it's like understanding it's a whole process and approaching it that way. So I think that's what's nice.
Cool. That's huge.
I also think I've said this. I've started saying this a lot in a lot of places, but I think treating the brand more like a character than a brand.
That's cool.
Is really, it has been kind of a big unlock for me, because it means that it means that we're not looking for a bunch of answers. We're looking for the right answer. Meaning, like, if you're sitting in a writer's room and you're writing for an episode, you know, you're brainstorming an episode of the show, and you're like, okay, here's the situation. What happens in this situation? Like, how do the characters react? What happens next? Right. And there's kind of like a right answer in that situation. Like, oh, well, this is what the character would do. Or conversely, oh, well, we can make a surprising kind of twist on what they would do and surprise the audience by this. Right.
Yeah. That's good.
But like, you're not in marketing. It's usually like, you know, the decks of like, here's 20 things we could do. And so I've kind of flipped, like, what could we do to what would Liquid Death do? And if we all point at, if that's what we're searching for, there's like a single right answer. I've never heard of advertising and marketing called being referred to as being objective, but it's 100% objective, because we're looking for like, what would the character of Liquid Death do? And then you take away all that subjectivity and you're like, cool, well, we all agree that's what Liquid Death would do. So that's what we should do.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really cool.
So that's been kind of huge, I think, both in like the creative process and then making it easy for us to all point to things and all decide like, yeah, that's the right answer. And so I tell people, like partners and celebrities and stuff, a lot of times, like, we're going to bring one thing because we're going to find like what the right answer is. And then we're just going to bring that to you. And then so everyone's like, okay. And so we never have to sell in anything to anybody, internally or externally, a lot of times, because it's just like, cool, that feels like the right answer.
That's cool.
Which is such a flip, I think, from where I, you know, am used to working in other places in my career in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's very different than how we've done things too. I mean, I've been blessed in that, like, a lot of my ideas can get greenlit and stuff, in terms of like, hey, I have this idea for this ad and it's a little ridiculous, and it can get greenlit, which is great, but there still is a lot of red tape to get through in terms of like getting approval on the script, getting the shot list approved. And one thing that's exciting about what you're saying is you're kind of taking the momentum of the original funny idea and you're running with that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times by the time we get on set, I've read and rewritten the script 100 times where I stare at, I don't even know if it's funny anymore. I'm like, what was I so excited about? Yeah. And then by the time we get on set, and, you know, we've been lucky, you know, working with really funny, talented people. And so there still is room for improv and stuff like that on set, but kind of the magic of the original idea gets a little lost in translation sometimes. And that's something that I've worked on, trying to figure out, how can I get things to be as funny in the edit and, you know, in post-production as they were when I was first just riffing the ideas and saying the lines that got this project greenlit in the first place. Yeah. And I think that you've unlocked part of that, which is just like just go into production and be like, hey, that's the idea.
Don't have a script, because then you can't look back and be like, well, that was what we had scripted and that's what we're trying to beat.
Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never heard of it referred to that way, but I like that idea of kind of just maintaining the momentum and pushing through all the way to the process. That's cool.
Well, it's very much like improv. It's very much like they say, improv comedians is like, hey, just yes and keep going and building off of it.
Yeah.
And then, but also it seems like, and I've thought this with agencies, and it's really cool to hear like, oh, this is how Liquid Death is running it, is you have these content creators that don't have any red tape when they make something funny and that goes viral. Like they're out there like, I have an idea, let's make it. And then they huck it and make it. And it's so cool to hear about a business that has that same mentality and to actually see like, hey, that mentality brings a lot of success to you. So that's really awesome. Freedom, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Weird how that works.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we're always like, we're like, hey, the competition isn't other things in our category or outside. It's like the competition are creators. It's people that are really good at making jokes and entertainment and stuff. It's whatever's in your feed is the competition.
Exactly.
And so if if that's not the standard we're holding up to, then what are we doing? And of course we have our own flavor of that. Everybody has a flavor, but the cool thing is we get approached by other brands and entertainment properties almost like as a content creator in a way that are coming to us looking for stuff.
That's right.
Because they, and I don't know that they necessarily know that is why they're there, but
Right.
it's kind of like the way that we look at it is like, we'll do some joint content together and like, and if you guys are in for the ride with us, let's do it. And so that's been the fun too, is pulling kind of other brands and other people into the world and bringing a little bit of like the Liquid Death chaos to places where we don't belong.
For sure.
It gets us even outside of like the world of healthy beverages and allows us to make makeup or hair products or whatever it is.
Yeah. On that, I want to be super selfish for a second and ask something I've just been really curious about.
Get in
so
there.
your guys' collaboration with The Boys TV show.
Yeah.
You guys have a great commercial that's in a classroom. We have just 2 weeks ago, we released a commercial that was also set in a classroom. We were in post-production when I saw your guys' spot, and I was like, oh my God. Ours is Dads in a Classroom. It's called Bad Dads Anonymous.
We stole your idea. Is that what you're getting at?
And we're coming after you. We're coming, and it's going to be.
Yeah, there's a mole in our company.
The courts are going to be full.
But I'm super interested in that idea because you guys went really crazy with it, and I love it.
So
You're
fun.
literally, you have, what's the character's name?
The Deep.
The Deep. He's literally smoking cigarettes and blowing it in kids' faces. What can you tell me the story behind that concept? I know there had to have been amazing stories from on set, and I'm just really curious to hear about it.
I'm actually bummed. That was one of the shoots I missed. I was out. I was somewhere. Unfortunately, I missed that one. It was actually the second one in the series. We did one previous to that 2 years ago. It was also one of the first things I did, which was the Deep cleaning up plastic from the beach with a bunch of kids. And it ends with him has a big pile of trash that all the kids have collected. And then he like gets lighter fluid and lights it on fire. And then all the kids start coughing on all the smoke. So it actually it was like, and then we also fired him after that. So he was our chief sustainability associate. And then so like we kind of did a sequel that it had kind of a similar shape to this one.
Uh-huh. That's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and this one was all about. So that was about our death to plastic emission. This was about, the dangers of sugary beverages. And the original version was more violent, I'll say, and we had to work through solutions on how it could get approved. And at some point, somebody I think on our team was like, well, there's smoking is, sugar's the new smoking. So what if we just had them ripping butts in the classroom? And like, amazingly, it got through standards. And I still can't believe it. Like that shot to me is like one of my favorite things we've ever gotten to make. Cause it's just a dude hawking healthy beverages just with like a cigarette just bobbing in his mouth in the classroom. And it's so wild. Every time I see it, it makes me laugh. So yeah, that was actually our solution. That was our solution to something else we were trying to get.
That was the tamed down version of the original.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that was great. I mean, people really love that thing. It blew up. It's got like 22 million views on Instagram right now, and it really like went wild. So it was cool to see. I mean, they're such great characters. Everyone over at Amazon is awesome. They've been really great partners, and yeah, it's like it's like a similar world where it's like The Boys is such a good satirical parody of both real world and fantasy world. It's kind of this great. It's trying to exist in the real world with us, and you look at everything they're doing, and so Liquid Death feels like a fake product to begin with that actually exists in the real world. So it's really fun. It's really fun to work with properties like that, where it's like, let's make something together that feels like it's extending that fake world of the show into the real world that we live in. Yeah. So the point of that was like, we dropped the video by firing him because he had fucked up and done this thing in the classroom. So that was kind of the announcement that we had fired this fake character that we had hired. So that's kind of fun, of like the world building, the comedy, like building kind of this comedic, bizarro world.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really brilliant campaign. Hats off to you guys. That was super
Thanks.
fun.
Yeah. It's fun to write for like a character that you enjoy watching, and then you're like, here you go.
Yeah.
And they're like, cool. We have like 2 notes on the script.
That's
great.
Sick. Yeah. It's like,
sweet. Yeah. Do you have a favorite project that you've done, like, and maybe even not based on like metrics or success, or views, whatever, just like a favorite thing, like a favorite campaign that you guys have done?
I really like people who ask that. I really like the elf thing because it's so weird, and it was like, it's such a weird commercial or video, and it makes no sense. And like I said, it's layering all these really bizarre comedic things kind of on top of each other. That one's still and you guys should go watch it if you haven't seen it. It's like the ending to it still like makes my brain tickle a little bit every time I see it, which is pretty cool. Uh-huh. So I love that one because it was also one of the first stuff. It was earlier this year, and I just kind of started directing things, and we were like, all right, see if we can pull this off. And I think we did a really I think the final product was really special.
Yeah, that's super cool. What's your transition into directing commercials been like? Was it kind of starting as a writer, ideator, and more of like a creative director into actually directing on set? How's that, or what's that journey been like?
Easy, I guess, just because it was more out of necessity. We shoot so many things that, I will still, we haven't used a director in probably half a year at this point. I think we'll use some for some things that are upcoming that are just outside, my partner's skill set for sure. And I don't know the technical side at all. So I'm coming into it as like, I know what I want to see when I get in the edit. I'm building the edit while I'm on set in my brain. Yeah. Right. And so what's nice about that is it's just sort of an extension of everything we're already doing, where versus like you give it to the director and they it's out of necessity partially, where we're just like, okay, we're going to have to go find a director we like, have this whole conversation. They're going to go off and do something. We're going to, even in our history, we've only ever gotten one treatment from a director ever. Because it's like, we don't need it. I don't need someone's vision on what we're doing. We know exactly what it is. I don't want someone else's opinion to like add another layer because we already understand what it needs to be. Right. So it's kind of out of that, which was just like, we just know what it is. So it's like, I don't know, we'll just step in front of it and do it. And so, and so it's been fun. It's just a cool new skill set and less scary than I thought it would be. We were shooting something on Wednesday, and I was like, oh, all directors is just someone who knows what they want. Mm-hmm. That's kind of all the job is at the end of the day. Right. And because we have a really great production team that we've built around us, so I trust everybody there to do all the stuff that I'm not good at. And so I was like, cool, I just have to be here and say like, yes, I have to kind of lead it creatively, but I can lean on everybody else to do all the technical things that, I don't necessarily have a full understanding of just yet. But it's been fun. And I think it's helped me approach the work better. And I'm lucky to have, like I said, I have a partner, Johnny Eastland, who's our EP who steps in and we kind of co-direct things together because he has much more the technical side of things as well.
Okay.
Dude, that's really cool. So sweet. So I want to change gears a little bit here. You are an ultra marathon runner. Is that correct? Is this what I've heard?
Yes, guilty.
Guilty as charged. Dude, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what are things outside of the office that you do that bring you life, that help you be creative? I imagine running is one of them, but just walk us through that.
I do. I started, my first 100 miler was in 2011.
Dang.
I was living. Yeah. I've now done, I just did one 3 weeks ago. So now I think I've done 2,200 miler or longer distances at this point.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. And, it was funny. It started as, it honestly started as like, I was at this place, Christopher Porter Bogusky, in Boulder, Colorado. That was like this crazy agency. We won Agency of the Decade, Agency of the Decade when we were back there. And that was kind of my first real job where I cut my teeth for like 5 years. But it also had this, reputation of being a sweatshop, and literally to the point where the publication that gave us Agency of the Decade several years prior ran a picture on the front of the magazine that was all the leadership in the agency working in a sweatshop with the creatives chained to desks. Like that was the front cover of the Creativity magazine.
Wow.
And so, I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing time, but we were just working insane hours, usually till at least 11 o'clock every night. Would pull an all-nighter, every couple weeks, constantly. I didn't get a single day off for the first 5 months, like including weekends.
Oh my
bro, that's intense.
Yeah, it was crazy, and everyone lived through it. It was like, it really was like war. Like everyone that came out of it, we all have an understanding of each other, and
you trauma bonded.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Even Mike, our founder, was there for a bit. It was intense, but we all, learned a lot out of it and launched all of our careers.
Cool. That's really cool.
But yeah, it was so crazy. And I was in Boulder, and you're just inside this like awful, concrete building that, was an old indoor soccer stadium or indoor soccer field or something. And there was like no windows, and all your meals were brought to you. So it was like being in a casino where you didn't know what time of day it was.
Oh, wow.
And it was also outside of town. It was just terrible. Like it was in a corporate park somewhere. It was terrible. And so one day I was just like, man, I feel like I should be up in those pointy mountain things over there, and just kind of started hiking, and that turned into running. And then I kind of accidentally, I was following a schedule for a marathon training schedule, just because I was like, it seems easy if I have a schedule. I'll just do whatever the schedule says. I don't have to think about it. And then I was like, I guess I'm training for a marathon. I guess I'll do it. And then that evolved into like, I was like, well, I guess I can run a 50 miler. And then it was like 100 miler. It just kind of evolved from there. But it became such an insane, intense thing, but it was equal and opposite to the intensity of the job that I had.
Right. Yeah.
In some fucked up way, I'm like, they canceled each other out by doing two insane things.
No, for sure.
That were different.
Yeah.
But it ended up teaching me eventually, like, to have kind of boundaries on the other thing, where I'd be like, hey, I can't come into the office Saturday morning until 10 a.m. because I have to go run like 20 miles this morning or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's cool.
That was like where I drew the line. Yeah. I was like, well, come at 10, not 9. I have to run 20 miles
on your weekend. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
So that was kind of how I got started. And then, I just think it's such a fascinating experience. Like I don't like do psychedelics or whatever, but I think it's like, it gets you to the edge of human existence and experience in a lot of ways, where you physically get to be out in places that very few people see a lot of times, and then you're kind of doing this thing that pushes you to the edge, mentally, emotionally, it's just a really amazing kind of experience. And then, and even now, I think right now in ultra running, there's a lot of even creativity in the formats of races. There's all kinds of, there's one guy in particular who's just invented the most insane, compelling concepts for races. And I won't go into it because
that's cool.
It's in the weeds, but there's a lot of like creativity in there that I don't think you would maybe on the outside think about it per se, but it's a good time. And so actually I about a little less than a year ago, launched like a comedy podcast, the first ever ultra running comedy podcast.
Love it, dude.
As far as we've been able to find out with doing no research.
Yeah.
So that's that claim I can't.
We're the only ones. It's just us. Not even gonna look because we know we're the only ones.
That's really cool.
Because I want to like bring more. It's such a dumb pursuit. Like objectively, it's like you're gonna start here and run 100 miles, and you may end up right back where you started. Like that's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
So trying to bring some humor into that space as well.
What's it called? I bet people would like to listen to it. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Between Two Pines,
Sweet.
Which is
that's cool.
Don't tell Zach Elephant X is.
We won't. Yeah, we'll keep it DL.
I see no parallels there at all.
It's different types of plants entirely.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that's been a good pursuit, and I started doing that honestly,
that's
like
awesome.
to push myself, because I was like, it's just another way to do comedy. It's my weak ass step into doing stand up is like trying to do a comedy podcast. Instead of getting famous for stand up and then trying to monetize it with the podcast,
100%.
I'm going
the other way.
Going the reverse way.
We know that game well.
Yeah. We definitely do more podcasting right now than stand up. Yeah. We live in a town called Redding. It's in North California.
Let me tell you.
Yep.
Scene.
And there is no comedy scene. We are the comedy scene. So it's like if we want to do stand up, we have to put on a show and get the thing paid for. So then we usually, the past couple times we've just done our same 20 minutes that we have because people are coming, they're paying to come. We don't want it to be a bad show. You sneak in a new 5 minutes in there, podcasting has kind of been an outlet for us too in that way of like, hey, well, let's at least work out bits and stuff on the show and talk to other funny people. You got to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
That's super cool. I actually got really obsessed with with ultra marathon running as an idea during the beginning of COVID. So when everyone was locked in our houses and all there really was to do was just go run. Like that was the only escape I had. And so I started training for a half marathon and I got into David Goggins and Scott Jurek. Is that his name?
Just
Scott
the
Jurek?
most intense people.
Scott Jurek.
These guys, doing like 200-mile races, and I didn't even know it was a thing. It actually learning that there was something beyond a marathon blew my mind.
Wait a second.
And I started listening. I think I listened to like 10 or 11 ultra marathon books on Audible. Like I would just binge these books because these guys they would write about, how they got started. A lot of them started as addicts or they were really obese or whatever their journey was into fitness, and then they just didn't stop. They just kept running miles and miles, and then they kind of like journal their experience, like thoughts they were having while like on mile 52 and what kept them going to get to through mile 80. So it's really when I saw that you were an ultra marathon runner, I think I saw on LinkedIn or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's in marketing and he runs ultra marathons. That is such a cool combo,
Yeah,
it's a very time-consuming combo is what it is.
That's ultimately why I stopped distance running, because when we had our daughter, I was like, it became less and less cool with my wife for me to disappear for 3 hours. She's like, could you get a treadmill, buddy?
Dude, that's cool. But I mean, how much does that does the ultramarathon mindset just bleed into your day to day? I would imagine it's a lot. Like, do you see comparisons all the time in the work you do with it, or is it more of like for you, like it's an escape? It's like a way I can separate and detach from that. But
no, I mean, I think it's like, look, if you run up a mountain in the morning and pee on the top of that mountain, like nothing is going to get to you that day. You've already accomplished everything you need to do.
That's great. Yeah.
So you're like, I'm good. Like nothing really phases me. So I think cool. That's what's been nice is it really puts everything in perspective. I don't do any like extreme sports. I mean, this is an extreme sport, I guess, but it's like the same way that every, pro snowboarder and, base jumper are like super chillax bros. Right. It's like probably because they're doing such crazy things in their other outside life that when they just sit down, they're just like, yeah, man,
I'm good.
Yeah. So I think like part of that has bled into just kind of my outlook on things and not being ruffled and, being someone who's really solution oriented versus like getting so emotional about stuff. So I think that's what's been nice.
That's really cool.
That's
awesome.
I
think a lot of more people need to start running. That's
Absolutely.
what I think.
Hell yeah.
They need it.
Honestly, anyone can do it. I mean, it's really the commitment. It's not like you have to be fit. I mean, show up to a 100-mile race. You'll see people of all body types there.
That's cool.
It's pretty wild. It's a really inclusive environment, which is cool. Like even Scott Jurek, in my race that I just did, he mans the aid station every year at mile.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
92. So him and Hal Kerner out there, and he 92. I'm like all fucked up, and
that's sick.
2 a.m, and he like slaps me on the back, and he's like, "Hey man, you got 9 miles left to go."
Dude, that's amazing.
It's just really it's a cool group of people. So what I'm saying is, you made it like a quarter of the way there. It's your half marathon. You gotta keep going, man.
I know. I need to pick it back up. Honestly, I have fallen off so hard and blamed it on my kids. So I need to get back out there.
Important to have a scapegoat for all your inequities.
It's my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old. Like, before you were born, I could run 13 miles.
I could have done
it. I sound like an old man for some reason. Have you done Badwater, and do you want to?
No, I have not. That one never really interests me, but I'm getting to the point where I've done almost all the races there are, all the biggies. So probably at some point.
That's intense.
I've done now like 4 200+ mile races. And I'm doing another one next summer, next June, Tahoe 200. So yeah, the big guys those ones are fun because they just, man, I mean, if you're out running for 3 or 4 or 5 days straight, it's wild.
Yeah, that's intense, man.
How do you recover from something like that? Like, are your legs just shot for weeks afterwards, or that sounds
after 200? Yeah, I mean, you're pretty messed up, but it is surprising. The more you do it, the faster recovery comes.
Okay.
It's like, I think your body at a certain point is just like, hey man, we're trying to give you signs to stop doing this, and it seems like you're not really paying attention. So whatever you want to do, just go for it at this point. So I felt pretty good after my last 100, just recently. So
that's so
but
awesome.
200, 250, 300 is
that's a
recovery.
Long
Definitely
way.
Ungodly. That is insane.
Yeah, that's far.
Yeah.
Well, we are running out of time. I appreciate so much all the value you've given and just insight. It's just so fascinating to hear your story. I'd like to ask one more question for our listeners, for someone who might be, they are not the VP of creative at their job. They're not even the marketing director. Maybe they're a marketing manager or a copywriter, but they really love marketing and they have a lot of good ideas and they struggle. They don't work in an environment like Liquid Death where it's like, you have this idea, let's go shoot it next week. And they might be feeling a bit frustrated. What advice would you give to someone in that place in their career where they have a lot of ideas and they want to grow, but they aren't currently in an environment that supports that?
Yeah, I'd just say just give up now. It's probably the best.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Marketing's a Joke.
That'll be the clip.
Andy Pearson.
No, I mean, I think everything is an opportunity. I think that is that's one of the things that I've always believed in and I've found works really well here, where I mentioned earlier, we write like emails. The email is an overlooked piece of what everybody does because it gets sent out constantly. It's like the biggest touch point, going to, blasting to however many hundreds or millions of people you got on your list.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know, we're just going to write this email and tell people about stuff. But for us, it's like, dude, let's write the funniest email we can possibly write that shows up. I was just at a party last weekend and was talking to this guy who found out I was who I am. And he was like, oh my God, I love Liquid Death. He's like, it's so bad. It's the best. He's like, I see emails from you guys and I don't even want to buy any. I don't even need to know what you're selling. I just get stoked to like open them up and read them because I always know it's
so
be something insane. And so it's like, apply the same creative juice to the little stuff and like the stuff that you can do, right? And try to make like the little stuff big.
That's cool.
Because if that's all the power you have is over these little things, then like rather than grumbling about them, try to turn that into something that's worthwhile. I think that's a good way to do it. And like, and the other thing is similarly is like, I talked a lot about how we don't know what's going to hit. Sometimes we try to spend as little money as we can on things, because we don't know. And when there's a little bit of money in something, there's way less pressure for that thing to perform and do all this stuff. And so I think as creatives, we're always trying to sell in like the biggest idea possible. And it's going to have this person, this celebrity and this thing, we're going to hire this crazy director and we're going to go shoot in Brazil or whatever it is. Like that's like the kind of the creative,
right,
like default. And I think you just got to sell them smaller ideas, because when it's smaller, people care less about it internally, and you have a longer leash to run on it, and you can get away with stuff. And there's not as much pressure for that thing to do great. And when it does, it surprises you and everyone else, and it's awesome, right?
Love it.
And so I think like, if anything, it's about like thinking small. And I think we've been trained to think big. And I think the opposite is totally what if you really want to be able to test stuff out, that like start thinking small and making those things as killer as they can.
Yeah. That is so good, man.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
And then quit. Yeah. And then quit when it doesn't work. Just get out.
Yeah, get out of there.
A new job.
Go
work for Liquid Death.
Yeah, freaking A, man.
Andy, thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's been awesome. Definitely cheering for you guys. What's next? What are you? What can we look forward to from Liquid Death in the coming months?
More wild stuff. I mean, I always say it's like the fun of Liquid Death is you don't know what's coming next, and sometimes we don't either.
See, that's so good.
So it's like that's the fun part about it. So yeah, we have some really fun stuff in the hopper. Lots of stuff I'm looking forward to. Can't talk about any of it, but
of course.
Watch out for the emails, I guess.
Okay, so I will subscribe and I will watch out.
Andy, thank you so much, man.
How can people learn more about you and what you're doing?
Just Google me and I'm everywhere. So.
Guys, audience, Google Andy Pearson. Find him. Listen to his podcast, Between Two Pines. If you're into running,
there you go.
Comedy podcast, check it out.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again so much, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really fun.
Dude, of
Absolutely.
course.
All right, have a great weekend.
Cool. We'll see you.